In today's show, I'm looking at the top 20 players for fantasy basketball over the last 2 weeks for points and category leagues. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com and at Yahoo Sports Australia, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Let's look at the top 20 players over the last 2 weeks on a per game basis for fantasy basketball. And those of you who want to know where you can look at the rankings yourself, basketballmonster.com, the name that I say literally at the beginning of every single show. Rankings, projections, trade analysis, comments, any sort of tool you want, we have it over there. I don't just say that name for fun at the start of the show. That's where you can find all this stuff. So let's talk about it straight away. The top 10 players in category leagues. At number one, over the last 2 weeks, it's Steph Curry. And it's not remotely close. Steph is averaging 36 points per game. He is hitting, hold on to your testicles, he is hitting 7 threes a game at 53%. Now, you don't need me to come and tell you that that's not going to maintain. He's hitting 58% of his shots, 95 from the line, 6 boards, 6 assists, 1.7 steals. Oh, that's pretty normal. But 7 threes a game, it's... And, you know, I say that, and I go, you know what, that's not going to continue. And then a little bit of my brain goes, but maybe, but what if? Because it's Steph Curry. Like, if anyone can do that, if anyone could hit 50% of their threes and take 15 a game or 13 a game, whatever he is, this is the bloke that's going to do it. Now, he's not going to do it, but maybe he is. No, he won't, but maybe. Anyway, Steph's the third ranked player over the course of the year. I think he's going to be top 3, top 4 for the rest of the year pretty easily. That's just massive. It's absolutely massive. Number 2.
Big chungus, big chungus, big chungus.
Nikola Jokic. We've seen a little bit of a drop-off in him in his assists. Only 7.7 per game, but he's made up for that by saying, screw this, I'm just going to go big usage now. 32 points per game over his last 6. 2.5 threes. Almost a block. 1.2 steals. A true shooting of 66%. Excellent stuff. Can he maintain a usage of above 31? I'm not sure, but he should. Because everything else that he's doing there, 10 boards, 7.7 assists, 57 and 87 is his shooting numbers. That's all fine. Now, the 56% from 3 isn't going to stick. But if he can maintain that very high usage, no reason he can't maintain a top 3 or top 4 finish. He is really taking his game this year to another level. So has the bloke who's number 3, Joel Embiid. Embiid second ranked over the course of the year. He's averaging 33 points in 32 minutes with 10 rebounds. He's blocking a shot. He's hitting a 3. He's got 1.5 steals. And while I look at Steph and I look at Jokic and go, they're shooting over 50% from 3. Like, that's not real. Embiid here is hitting 33% of his 3s, 58% of his 2s, 88 from the line. That's actually not crazy. Like, this is 33, 10, 3, a block, a 3, 1.5 steals. Maybe he continues it. I don't know. He's really good. He is really good. I think Embiid could be the number 1 player this year on a per game basis. Because again, those numbers, they're not really changing, I don't think. Number 4 is Damian Lillard, who is really stepped his game up. Remember when we did this to begin the season? I don't think he was in the top 20 for the first couple of weeks. 31 points, 7 assists, 4.8 threes, 44 from the field, 94 from the line. 41% of threes, relatively sustainable numbers. Maybe the usage will not. Maybe almost definitely the usage comes down when McCollum returns, whenever that is. But we're still talking weeks away there for CJ. So Lillard is just going to continue to put up big numbers. 7th ranked player over the course of the year. And then at number 5, it is James Harden. Only a 24% usage, one of the lowest usages in the top 20, which is amazing for James Harden. 22 points only, but 9 rebounds, 11 assists, a block, 0.8 steals, 50 and 93. And there's significant room for him to get better. because he can average more than 22 points a game. He can hit more than 2 threes per game, and he can definitely get more than 0.8 steals per game. So he can easily jump back up into that top 3, top 2, top 1 type area. We're just going to need a few things to come together, but I do believe they can that they can occur. Let's see. At number 6, Fred VanVleet of the Raptors. He is up and down almost more than anybody, but 22 points in 36 minutes, 7 assists, a block, over 2 steals, hitting 43% of his threes, 45 from the field, 96 from the line. The only thing there that I'd say probably doesn't stick is the 0.9 blocks, but he has established himself clearly as the best fantasy player on the Raptors. Maybe he's the best player on the Raptors. I guess Kyle Lowry would have a decision to, or you'd have to have a discussion there about Kyle. But VanVleet is just cranking him out. He's the 16th ranked player this year. Number 7 is a dude that we haven't seen for a while, but that is Kevin Durant. He will be back on Saturday. Only 3 games in this time frame, but 24, 7, and 4 with a steal, a block, over a 3. Elite percentage, 75 true shooting, hitting 50% of his threes. I'd like to see him hit more threes. The percentage is fine, but only 1.3 triples when you're hitting him at 50%. Just take more of them, my guy. That's, I guess, a little bit of a concern, but he's the 4th ranked player this year. His return from his Achilles injury has been spectacular. Number 8 is Trae Young, who is outside the top 20 over the course of this season, but recently, he's playing a lot of minutes, 37 of them in fact. His usage is up to 31. He's averaging 28 points and 11.6 assists. Everything else is sort of falling within the zone it needs to be, but the reason he is this high, outside of the 11 assists, is the fact that he is 92% from the line and he is taking 10 attempts per game. The only player that is more than that is Embiid. That's a big reason why Embiid's numbers are high, and a guy that we'll talk about a little bit later who's got just a smidgen more attempts per game than Trae Young currently does. Young's hitting 42% of his threes and 46% of his twos, so no real massive sign of regression in those numbers there for Trae. Number 9. LeBron James. He's been outside the top 20 almost all season. He's now into 15th over the course of the year. It does help that over the last 2 weeks, LeBron has averaged 40 minutes per game, 26, 8, and 9. He's hitting threes at a high level this year, but it's dropped off recently to 33%. He's at 49 and 76, so he's not being fueled by his percentages. He's being fueled really just by those big Luka Doncic, Russell Westbrook counting stats, and the fact that he's averaging 1.7 steals. I don't expect LeBron to remain in the top 10, but he has stepped it up. The overtime obviously has helped to push those numbers higher than they were. This guy at number 10, probably the biggest surprise here, Jonas Valanciunas. Only 3 games, but he's averaging 21 and 14. And the reason he's here is his true shooting 73%. 93 from the line on 5 attempts per game. 64 from the field on 12 attempts per game. 50% from 3, another 50% shooter from 3 in the top 10. He won't remain this high, really comfortable in saying that. I'm not even sure he is a top 50 guy for the rest of the season. But since he returned from his bout with COVID, he's been awesome. Number 11 is Chris Paul. 23 points, 7 assists, almost 2 steals, 53 and 96, elite efficiency, great 2-point shooting, great steal numbers, which had been missing from Paul this year. He's the 30th ranked player this year. This is a bit of a hot streak. Maybe it's a sell high situation for Chris Paul, but we just got to celebrate the fact that he's been this good. Some of these games were without Devin Booker, and that did boost some of his value up. But, what more is there really to say about Paul, who should settle in to be in that back-end second-round range. Number 12 is Kyrie Irving, the 3rd Brooklyn Nets player on this list. 28 points per game, 6 assists. He's averaging a block per game as well, shooting 53 and 97 from the field and from the line, 38% from 3, elite efficiency. And as you'll see, every one of these players, bar LeBron, which is unbelievable to say, had a true shooting of over 63%. That shows how important in category leagues getting good efficiency is, and to being good players, obviously. At number 13. If I can find the button.
Giannis Antetokounmpo.
I think this might be the first time we've had Giannis in the top 20 for category leagues. 34 minutes, 31 points, 11 boards, 5 assists, 1.5 blocks, 73 from the line. That's very different from being a 65% shooter there. It is on 10 attempts still, so it is somewhat of a negative still, and a pretty large negative on your free throws, but not an absolute disaster that it was before. The scoring is up. The minutes are up, 34 a game over the last 8. The rebounds are solid. He's still not hitting threes, but the free throws, he has been a 73% guy in the past. So while I say there's no reason he can't be that, there obviously is a reason because he hasn't been that, but it's in his head, and he's got the ability to be that level of free throw shooter, so let's hope that it turns around. His teammate, Drew Holiday, is number 14. Drew obviously dealing with COVID at the moment. He's averaged 32 minutes, 19 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, and 2 steals. Why is he this high? Well, he's shooting 58% of his shots, and that includes 47% from 3. So there's going to be some regression from Drew. He's the 27th ranked player this season. I'm not sure that he's a top 30, top 35 guy necessarily for the rest of the year. I think there might be some level of regression in that shooting. Another player that we don't have the services of at the moment is number 15, Paul George, the Beatle. 33 minutes, 26, 6 and 5, 4 triples, 59 and 89. Again, absolute elite efficiency numbers from Paul George. We don't know when he's coming back. Unfortunately, we hope it's not too long. We hope it's just like another week, but that is remains frustrating for how good that he's been. The 11th ranked player over the course of the season. At number 16, it is Zach LaVine, averaging 31 points on a true shooting of 67%. Unfortunately, his ranking is held back by almost complete absence of steals and blocks, but everything else is very, very good. LaVine is the 10th ranked player this year. I think that's probably the right zone for him. 17 is Al Horford. 29 minutes a game for Horford, the lowest minutes of anybody in the top 20. Why is he this high? Well, I'll tell you why. He's averaging 2 steals and 1.3 blocks. That is going to regress and regress hard. 18 points, 6.5 boards, 5 assists, 2.3 triples. Hasn't missed a free throw in the last 2 weeks. 46% shooting, 45% from 3. He is the 51st ranked player this year. I think that's 50 to 60 is probably a fair ranking range for where he ends up. Of course, we have to remember that he could get injured, he could get traded, he's going to sit back-to-backs. All that stuff is a concern for Al Horford. Another injured player at number 18, the Crucifix, Christian Wood. He played only 24 minutes. I lied. I said Horford's the only guy under 30. Well, he was the only guy under 30 until we talked about Christian Wood. 24 minutes. 18 and 8, 2 threes, a steal, 1.5 steals actually, 1 block. Unbelievable 67% from the field. He is the 22nd ranked player this year. We just hope to get him back soon. I think it won't be too much longer than 2 more weeks. Probably back sooner than that, and then he can continue being close to a top 20 player. And this bloke in here for the first time, number 19, LaMelo Ball. 33 minutes, 22 points, 5.5 boards, 7 assists, 1.8 steals, 49 and 90 from the line on almost 4 attempts. With a true shooting of 62%. He has been absolutely elite. He's the 54th ranked player this year in 27 minutes. I think that he has got a legitimate chance to be a top 35 player for the rest of this season. They just need to keep pumping him the minutes. His usage is fine. He's getting big counting stats. He is going to be a fantasy start. And then at number 20, it's Luka Doncic. 29, 7 and 8.5. 82 from the line on big attempts is pretty strong, but only 45 from the field. The lack of defensive numbers holding him back. And his rebound numbers have fallen off a bit as well. Just 7.3 boards in those last 8 games. All right, let's have a look now at points leagues. Top 20 players per game, standard Yahoo points. At number 1, it is Big Chungus.
Big Chungus, Big Chungus, Big Chungus, Big.
He's averaging 59 fantasy points per game. That's higher than what he's been doing all year, where he's at 57, and that is tying in with that increased usage. Number 2 is Giannis Antetokounmpo, the number 3 ranked player on the year, averaging 56.5. So he's starting to take his game back up to that level. And number 3 is Joel Embiid at 54 points per game over the last 2 weeks. Again, that's higher than his current season averages. So these guys are all playing above their heads, as I detailed in that earlier section, talking about some of their shooting numbers, maybe not so much Embiid. Number 4 is Steph Curry. Now, Curry is not normally the best points league player. In fact, he's 12th this season. But 54 fantasy points per game over the last 2 weeks. Because he's averaging that 36 real-life points per game, he has been fantastic. I don't imagine that he maintains top 5 fantasy points value moving forward, but that increase in usage and scoring has been useful. Number 5 is LeBron James. He's averaging 53 fantasy points, up from the 48 per game he's averaging this year. It's pretty clear that he's trending in the right direction. He should be able to maintain, pretty clearly as a top 10 fantasy points guy, maybe even pushing into the top 5. Number 6 is Jim Harden. He's averaging 51. That's up from his season average as well, almost 1.5 fantasy points per game higher. I think he's more of a 50-point guy than a 51-point guy, but that's almost splitting hairs. Number 7 is Luka Doncic, who is the number 2 ranked player this year. It has been a little bit down for Luka, as I mentioned. That drop in rebounds has meant that he's averaging just 50 fantasy points per game, down from 53. Number 8 is Trae Young. He's also up to 50. He's in a nice little hot streak, shooting well, scoring well, getting a ton of assists. Really good stuff there. And number 9 is Damian Lillard, who, as I mentioned earlier, the increase in usage without CJ McCollum is enabling him to push to 50. He's at 49 a game here. Number 10, a guy we didn't talk about in the category leagues, Jim Butler, averaging 49 points per game. I should have looked. Where was Butler in the category leagues? 28th. His field goal percentage is rough. That's why he's not as high in category leagues, 44% there. But he's dropping in 49 fantasy points per game. It's up from the 43 that he averages this season. I think he is more of that 43 to 45 guy rather than being a 49-point player. At number 11, Nikola Vucevic. Vooch was way down in the 40s in category leagues because he's poor field goal percentage, but that doesn't really matter in points leagues, averaging 46 per game here. He's at 45.5 over the course of the season, so sort of just doing what he does. He's the 13th ranked player, 11th ranked player here over the last 2 weeks, averaging 23 and 13 with a block. He's carrying a huge load.
Giggity!
For the Magic, big usage, big minutes. Maybe that comes down later on when some of these players return, but he's playing pretty well at the moment. Number 12 is De'Aaron Fox, averaging almost 46 fantasy points. That's way up on his season number of 39. He's averaging 30 points per game with 8 assists per game. We know that his category league numbers get dinged because of his poor free throw percentage, but Fox has been on an absolute tear. I'm not sure I expect him to continue being a 30-point per game scorer, but he is at the moment. Number 13 is Pascal Siakam, averaging almost 45 points per game. It is a nice little hot streak for Pascal, averaging 25, 6, and 4 with 1.8 steals. Part of the downfall in Siakam's game recently has been a reduction in his defensive stats. We've seen them push back up, and that's pushed his value back up here. Number 14 is the fun guy, Kawhi Leonard. He's at 45 points per game, a little bit down from where he's been this year, but he's a 45 to 46 point guy majority of the time, just cranking it out. 28, 7, and 4 with 1.3 steals. 15 is Levine. He's averaging 45 fantasy points as well. A little bit of a higher average than what he has been doing. He's the 22nd ranked player in points leagues, a much better player in category leagues, but this is obviously impressive in a points league scenario here for Levine. And to round things out, number 16, Kyrie Irving with 45 fantasy points. Jason Tatum has 45 fantasy points at 17. Tatum is playing 38 minutes a night in his return from COVID, averaging 26, 7, and 5.5 with 1.5 steals. Really hard to complain too much about that. He's really bang on his average there. Number 18 is Paul George at 45 fantasy points. We spoke about him already. And same with Jonas Valanciunas at number 19, who's averaging 44 fantasy points per game since he returned from COVID. Number 20 is Anthony Davis, currently dealing with that Achilles tendinosis. We hope he's back soon. He's played 37 minutes a night in his last 4 games, averaging 24, 7.5 with 1.8 blocks and 1.8 steals. We'd hope we get a little bit more out of Davis, who's only the 14th ranked player this year in points leagues, and he's only averaging 44 fantasy points over the last 2 weeks. I should have done this for category leagues, and I'll go back and do it now, but the last 4 players out of the top 20, 21 is Sabonis, 22 is Gilgeous-Alexander, 23 is Van Vliet, and 24 is Julius Randle. For category leagues, 21 is Bam Adebayo, 22 is Kawhi, 23 is Siakam, and 24 is Don Mitchell. Guys, that'll do it for me today. Don't forget to subscribe, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube. Give me a thumbs up, hit the notification bell, leave your comments down below, guys. We are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.